Let's call this meeting to order. The time is 5:31 p.m. Roll call. Mr. Bailey. Mrs. Dean. Mrs. Martin.
Here.
Mr. McAfee is absent. Ms. Miller.
Here.
Mr. Osowski. The chair is here. If we could all stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right. Whew. As we'll move on to President's remarks, I have one. Please place cell phones on silent. That's your typical President's remarks. And actually, I lied. I have two. In this crazy heat, you all make sure you're staying safe and hydrated and inside as much as you can. Hold on one moment. Mr. Bailey, is your camera recording from the table? You cannot record from the table. I'm talking about the recording of this meeting from this board table. Yes. Okay, it's just a regular camera? Okay, we're good. I'm good. Thank you. I just wanted to make sure. All right, moving on. Can I get a motion to adopt the agenda of the June 17th, 2024 regular board meeting as presented? So moved. Moved by Mr. Osowski, seconded by Ms. Miller. Is there any discussion? Hearing none. All in favor say yes. Opposed? Yes. Motion carries.
That's why I didn't do it, because we do have to have some type of data. You see mine is empty, because I can't. I remember something. Yes.
Call to the audience, public participation regarding agenda items. Y'all raise your hand. Okay. All right, moving on. Presentations, NWEA results, Kim Crenshaw, Executive Director of Curriculum and Technology.
I'm not unmuted. So please feel free to, if you look through this later and you have a question, please let me know. But I'll go through kind of a high-level overview just of what's in here. And then if after you have questions, even, whatever after today, you can shoot me an email or we can talk at next month's meeting. So I pretty much use my kind of similar presentation every year, just so that it looks the same and you can all kind of get the gist of what we're doing here. So I gave you the list of embedded test taking tools that the students. Oh, I should probably advance the slide here. The test taking tools that the students have available to them within the test. I will also say that this school year, NWEA did a little bit of change in their testing system. They kind of altered the algorithm just a little bit to make it a little bit more grade level friendly. So the students are seeing more questions based on their grade level and then and the content that they're being given or should be given during that school year. So so the test still adjusts. It's still the same questions. It's just the algorithm is just set up just a little bit different. So their norms will change again in a couple of years. So they started it this year. I think they told me when I met with them last week, I think she said 2027. They'll have another set of norms that come out and it will be based more on the way this algorithm is written for this test. So the next page is also some more non-embedded test taking tools. The breaks that they have, dictionary that's universal in there. Some other things that students are allowed to use if they need to. So when we start looking at our district data, I will have to remind you all that we did do a little bit of change in the district this year. I don't know if you're aware, but we switched some buildings around. So our data isn't going to look totally same to same because we're not all in the same building. So just want to point that out before we go on. But this is just a quick recap of where we were last year at this time. So I was able to pull the data from what would have been the K1 building, McGowan, Keeler, whatever we were calling it at the time. So that was what their data looked like last year. Obviously, you're always going to see quite a bit of growth in those lower grade levels because they're learning a lot in those first couple of years. So, so that's the growth for the math and reading at McGowan, Keeler. This would be Beach's growth for last year. That would be our 2-5 students. And we know we want to see our students more from the yellow, green, and blue categories and not so much in the red and orange. Unfortunately, we have quite a few students in the red and orange, and that's what we're trying to fix. So keep all of these things kind of in mind as we get to this year's data. This is Hilbert Middle School, grades 6 to 8. And then the high school is 9 to 11, only because we don't typically give the 12th graders the NWEA test because they're done with us. So we aren't trying to see how much more they're going to grow next year. So that is our last year's data in a quick nutshell. So now we're going to look at some district data from this year. So the little diamond, the little gold diamond, is where NWEA says that we should get to, each grade level should get to. And then the blue line is where we actually made it to. So as you can see, all of our blue lines are well above our little projected growth norms there. So that's a great sign for us. We've had growth from, and this is from fall to spring. So I think that is a huge thing to see for our math scores for grades K through 11. So that is our math score. Again, fall to spring growth. And then our reading scores. Not quite as spectacular in some of those higher grades, but one thing we have to remember when we're looking at NWEA scores, when we're looking at our spring scores, is that in the spring, the kids take a ton of tests. They're taking their M-STEP, they're taking PSAT tests, they're taking, end of year tests, and it's also SAT, PSAT, whatever other things the state is giving. So a lot of the older kids tend to get kind of tested out at that time. And sometimes you see them not really putting in, a ton of effort into some of the tests. And I guess, that might be part of what we see here.
Excuse me.
Yeah.
Can we go back to the math score, the K through 12? Can you break down this chart, some of the figures, the actual numbers? Because I know you're using the diamonds, but I want to talk about the actual figures a little bit.
The numbers at the top?
Yes.
Mm-hmm. So in the first column would have the average RIT score, which is the score that we look at when we're looking for the growth. So that's where the students are, where they're at in their grade level. And I have kind of a chart on the next page after these are done to show you where those correlate to. But according to NWEA, the number that's in the RITs, that's in that first column, is where they expect to see, is what would correlate them to the grade level that they're working at.
Okay.
So that's the average for our grades. And you'll see, and I'll show you the broken down kind of more by grade levels as we get further down into the presentation. The second column is the standard deviation, so anywhere within 10, what does that say? Because my eyes are bad. 10 and a half standard deviation either side would be considered kind of within that growth range. And then that is the percentile of achievement. The next group is the spring, which shows the same thing. And then the growth score shows how much growth we had from the fall to the spring. So it's about 22 points growth from the fall to the spring for, I'm looking at K. And then your grade level norms, how much your projected school growth should be, your conditional growth index, so within the 1.8 of that. And then the last columns there are how many students had growth scores. So just because they all took the test in the fall doesn't always mean that they're taking it again in the spring. And just because they took the test in the spring doesn't mean they took it in the fall. So we might not have a growth score for every single student. So, so of the students that took the test in the fall, there were 94 students that had growths. I think that says 94, yeah. 94, and then 68 of those, does it say 68? Oh my gosh, I really needed to bring my magnifier in with me. 68. I have it in my front pocket there. 68 of those students met their growth score, and then that's, so that 72% of our students in kindergarten made their growth score in the kindergarten level. And thanks. Look, now she gives me,
I got
gives me
it.
our fancy tool. Does that kind of make sense? And then that goes down the list. Yeah, I was reading those right. That's 68. I thought I could see it. My contacts don't always fail me. So that's for each of the grade levels as you go down the list.
Thank you.
Yep. And that will be the same for the language arts on the next page. Same chart at the top. The page behind that is the one that will show you the grade equivalency of that actual test score. So if you look at the, let's see, I'm just going to pick a number here. If I look at the fall math score for 5th grade, looks like our average is 188.3. So if I go to this chart on the next page and I look at the 2020 mathematics student achievement norms, and I go to the chart for the fall, I can see that that score of 188 point, what did I say? Hold on, let me go back. 188.3 for 5th grade is actually what a typical 3rd grade student would be working at. So the fact that we have growth doesn't mean that our students are all proficient. And that's something we have to keep in mind. So our students are growing, but not all of them are at grade level, and a good majority of them are going to be below. And that's what we're trying to work on, obviously, as a school district, right? Why we're looking at new curriculums, why we're looking at additional programming, our tutoring, our after-school tutoring, our parent university. All of those things are additional items to bring our student test scores up to that proficient level.
So I got a question. The chart that you used, like with the red and the blue, that says the 2020, the student achievement norms. Why are we looking at 2020?
Because that's what NWEA uses as their base.
Ah, okay,
And they
I
will
see.
readjust that in 2027. I think that was the year they gave me. So they take a time period and they kind of average it out, and that's the number that they find that most students are working at over a course of, and I do believe it's 7 to 9 years that they keep that record, and then that's how they come up with their norms.
Thank you.
Yep. So that's how you read on the next page. We'd read the score to say that if a student is scoring a 195 RIT, we would say the student is functioning as a typical 4th grade student at either the fall, spring, winter time of the year. Does that make sense? Kind of, sort of, a little bit? As a quick overview of how we do all of that. Oh, oops. Sorry, that was that page. I forgot to flip. The next page is just our growth. And I don't know why I didn't put the reading ones in here, I just realized. So this is our fall math, or this is our math spring scores, and I really don't know how I missed the reading ones. But here's our math ones, but I do have them later in the presentation in a different format. But you can kind of see that our averages are pretty much the same year over year on as you go through each of the grade levels. It's pretty consistent. There's a couple of outliers. In winter of 1920, was the year that things kind of shut down. So that year we did not do a spring test in spring of 2020. So that is from the winter of 2019. And then the 2021 school year in the fall, we did that test was given while the students were at home. So how accurate we know those scores were when the students were taking the test at home, we don't know because, we weren't there kind of monitoring it through the computer, but, as good as that can be. So now we can look at some of the data by buildings. I went too far. So this is the student growth at Beach Elementary for the 23-24 school year. You can see a lot of our students are in that yellow, green, and blue section, so that is very good to see. We're very happy to see that. Again, we can't really compare what the score looked like last year because last year they only had 2nd to 5th graders. So this year we also have the addition of the kindergartners. So the next couple of pages will show you the breakdown of each of the grade levels at Beach.
Good.
And we'll do the same thing with Hilbert, the same thing with the junior high. And I think usually I don't put Keeler and Veritas in the presentation, but because they played into our district score, I added everybody into the presentation this year. Thought it was kind of a good baseline for us to have going forward. So the next slide shows the kindergarten. And I think this one didn't show up right. No, this one did. The reading one didn't show up right in your presentation, but I'll point that out when we get there. So this shows you the grade level, and it shows you at the end how many students took that test in that very last column. So 49 kindergartners took the NWEA test in the spring. So that's their growth. Mm-hmm. Yep. So that's K through 3.
Oh, okay.
And the next page will show you 4 through 6. And again, like I said, there's so much information in this, and I'm not going to read every last little bit of it to you. That's why I'm going to let you ask questions later if you want to take more time to dive into them. Our 4th graders did a spectacular job this year, too, I would say, at Beach.
The blue and green to get to like the 85th.
Blue and green is good. That means they've made the most growth.
Yeah. What does the blue represent?
That is, if you look at the bottom of that first page, it's on the next page actually, if you flip it over, it shows you that they're in the 80th percentile and above.
Oh, okay, perfect. Thank you.
Green is 61 to 80, and yellow is 41 to 50. 41 to, what did I say? 60. Goodness sakes, seriously. It's time to visit the eye doctor again for my contact prescription. Did you get that on this? Thanks. Moving forward is the reading growth scores for Beach.
So we're looking at this right here is this for 6th grade. I think this is the math.
Yep. The first set of data is the math and all the buildings, and then the second set after the building scores will be the reading growth. Mm-hmm. And over the last couple of years, we've been working with a company called SIS for Teachers. It's a student intervention system that's working with our math program and building out activities and how to use our math books that we have and when to use them and what the appropriate lessons are to use with them, gives them some extra resources to use with math curriculum. So we've got K through 2 is completed, and this coming school year we'll be working on grades 3 through 6, maybe not all in this school year, but in the next couple years. So we will be working to increase our resources for math in all of those grade levels as well. And as we move into reading, obviously we know that we are purchasing, hopefully tonight, a new reading curriculum for grades K through 6. So hopefully that will, we'll see some changes in some reading scores as we move into the next couple of school years.
I think that as we look at our reading scores, it's important that we involve the parents into the reading, because we got to think about some of our parents. They may not be reading at a high level.
Yep.
You know what I'm saying? So when you're not reading at a high level as a parent, you may not be reading as much at home. So
Yep.
that engagement piece and getting these kids in like after school or some type of reading stuff,
Yep.
programming that they can do as a family.
Yeah.
You know.
Well, and we can offer,
I know. That don't mean they're gonna come.
we can offer all we want. And,
sure, for sure.
And then the actual involvement is where we seem to struggle a little bit. So, but we're working on it. Our parent university, I think, was a great step in that direction. Still need to work on attendance at that event as well for the coming years. So, you know, the parents that came were pretty consistent, it sounds like, but they weren't huge masses. So we're going to work on that for coming years and trying to grow that program as well, because they are giving a lot of good instruction for parents to be able to help their students during the parent university. So it was a great first year, and I think we got a lot of good ideas out of this year. So hopefully we can increase that parent engagement piece of our puzzle that we seem to be kind of lacking here. So we're working on it.
Oh yeah,
It's definitely in our plan.
I definitely know.
Yeah.
It takes a village for
Yep,
real.
it really does.
And it's just that when you see these scores for the reading, I'm down here basically in tears because
Yeah.
I think about their future. If you can't read, it's
Yep.
like that academic piece and the behavior, it goes together.
Yes, it does.
Yeah, but
Yep.
reading is slow overall with the nation. If you look at
Yes.
the statistics.
Correct, right.
But
Yep.
that's why we're changing to the new reading program.
Yes.
It has the Amelia.
Yep.
That helps the kids. They can get tutoring and they can hear the reading.
Yep.
And it'll be on their level, which differentiates the learning.
Yes.
So that's why the
Yeah.
reading program needs to be changed.
Yes.
Okay.
And I brought those videos tonight because I know we couldn't see them last week, so
Very
I did bring
good.
those tonight
Thank you.
to make
I
sure that you could see
appreciate it.
those.
That's what I
I've
have.
tested them, they work,
Yes.
so we got that going for us, and they'll be sound.
Okay.
All right, so, so like I said, I'm not gonna read through each one of these because they all, they say the same thing on all these pages. We have Hilbert's data. Hilbert's data is a little bit not as as Beaches, but we also have to remember that that's a brand new building.
Yeah.
And they had a lot of transitions this school year, a lot of new teachers in that building, new to the district. Some of them came from Beach, but a good majority of them were new teachers to the district. So, we had mid-year administration change. So I think we're going in the right direction. So we'll hopefully see lots of improvements in that area for next year. We only have one way to go from here is what I see, and that's up. There's 4 through 6. Oh goodness, I haven't even been showing the presentation. I'm sorry for the people online that watch this later. I'll go back and. And as we talked about earlier, as you get into some of the older grade levels, you're definitely not going to see, quite the same growth as you do in the lower grades because you wouldn't expect to see. I mean, that's why we gotta get them good here in the early grades so that by the time they get to those upper grades, it's, easy for them, I guess we'll say.
You said that it's not expected. Can you talk about that? What
Like,
do you mean?
the growth, the amount of growth isn't going to be as extreme. From, when you're a kindergartner coming into school, you're learning a ton of stuff. And as you get to 7th, 8th grade, you should already know how to read. So your growth shouldn't really, you're not trying to, you're not going too much further up.
Because by
Math
then-
is going to improve, but,
But then you already know that CAT is.
Right.
Right, you're not.
But I
It's
guess
comprehension though.
I guess what I'm saying is because it's dealing with their reading level at that particular grade level. If you're in the 10th grade, you're reading at a particular level, and that's what these scores are capturing. So I'm kind of looking at it a little different because it's highlighting the deficit that the kids are reading at versus they're not growing because they didn't get it. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
So
But you also have to factor in that this is a snapshot based on one test, and I guarantee you far more 10th graders check out on this test than do kindergartners and elementary students. So again, this is a source of data, but it's not the only data that the teachers use within their classrooms to look at student growth. But this is one potential source of data.
yes, sir.
So I don't think it's illustrative necessarily of where every student is or how every student is doing with regards to growth in particular classes.
Yes, sir.
And I also think we have to factor in that especially, we operate schools of choice, and a lot of times, we're taking in students that the first time they're with us and being tested could be at an upper grade level
And learn
versus like students who have been with us since kindergarten and worked their way through. So there's just, I just bring that up that there's a lot of variables here that lead into these line graphs that you see in front of you.
Right. And that is a good point Mr. Witt brings up is, and one of the reasons that we look to change that grade configuration is so that hopefully we have those kids from K through 6, and then we transition to the secondary campus and we have them from 7 to 12. So, you know, that's what our hope is, and, you know, what you're seeing here is not that configuration, because we're still kind of, you know, having.
I get it. I get that part. Yes,
Okay.
yes, ma'am. Thank you.
All right. So I'm just clicking through, so, like I said, we don't really need to read every last percentage on these, because we'll be here until tomorrow. And when you get to the Keeler data, also keep in mind that as you look at their grades, they have a lot more red, but there's also like 2 kids testing in certain grade levels. So if one kid doesn't do well, then that kind of
it affects
hits your score. So, but these do also count into our district data too, you know, I mean, when we look at our M-STEP and all of those things,
Yeah, I see it.
you know,
all in the red.
all of these things kind of transfer into what you see when our M-STEPs come out. And, you know, we do have some special populations in the district that do impact some of that test score that you see when those come through. And then also at Veritas, you're going to see similar, because they only have, you know, a very small percentage of students in the building. So again, when you have a couple kids at one grade level taking the test, and if they're having a bad day, and we make them sit down in front of a computer and click through buttons, sometimes it's not always the result we expect. And I will say, I know when I gave the test, if I saw a kid that just clicked through, and we know we get kids, because it tells you if a kid is clicking too fast, it'll alert you during the test.
Yeah.
And it will, at the end, it will give you like, sorry, you don't get a score because you went too fast. And we will make those kids redo. Doesn't mean they're gonna do a ton better, because they're just gonna click a little slower, but, you know, I mean, if you catch the kid on the wrong day and they're just really not feeling it, then, you know, that's, but it's the same with M-STEP, it's the same with, you know, I mean, this is, like Mr. Witt said, it's a snapshot in time, and, and this is kind of what we have to submit to people, you know, through the state and whatnot, and it is what it is. So I also like to always include our historical data with my presentation, just so that you can see year over year, they kind of stay in the same, our graphs all look pretty much the same. You have a couple of outliers here and there, but you can see that they're pretty consistent across the board. which is what we want to change a little bit. We want to try to have those go a little higher and stay higher or go higher than that even. So rather than that plateaued line that we kind of seem to have hit here. Then I also gave you, just by grade cohorts, first grade, kindergarten, first grade, second grade. I didn't do kindergarten because really it's only one test, so not really very exciting. But, you know, as you go through, you can see the different grade levels and where they're all kind of working.
Oh, the growth from kindergarten to first grade.
And you can see there's a couple of years and they just must have all been like, we're not feeling this test this year. And things kind of take a little droop, but
It's a little right.
yep. I see a couple there, so, you know, it happens. But again, our kindergarten, first grader, you're always going to see kind of those huge jumps. And so this is kind of what I was saying even earlier, our math scores by grade level and our reading scores by grade level. This is what we're trying to fix. We're trying to fix this plateau that we've hit, you know, where the scores kind of are the same year on top of year on top of year. We want them to improve, and we want them to improve a lot, because the more they go up, the closer we are to proficiency and the closer our students are to actual grade level. So, you know, as I said earlier, just because we see growth doesn't mean that they're all working at grade level. So our reading scores are really going to change when we implement this new reading curriculum next year. You just wait. Things are going to skyrocket. And then this last page, we had the teachers sit and look at some data earlier this year, and this was some guiding questions we gave them. And we will be doing this throughout the year next year as well, having them sit down and look at their data as the school year goes on. We have already planned a day at least of NWEA. I would dare you all to say that a couple times really fast, by the way. NWEA data data dives so that they can look at their own data. We're going to have our coaches do some presentations on, because once you get into the NWEA platform, that are the access that our teachers have to information and ideas for things that they can do with groups of students is unbelievable, and I don't know that all of our teachers have the time to go through all of that, so giving them some time during our professional development time and our PLCs after school should help us be able to kind of dive into that data a little deeper and see where our students are to help us with that growth that we're looking for. Oops. And that was the end of the presentation. Wasn't really supposed to just stop.
Thank
like
you,
that,
Ms.
but-
Crenshaw. Before I ask for questions, I will remind, I'm actually going to go down the table, I think. I remind you that there's a lot of work that goes into this, and so please be respectful of the people who are in those classrooms every single day when we raise questions. And so I'll just go down the table. Mr. Osowski, do you have any questions? Okay, Mrs. Martin.
No, I'm gonna examine later.
Ms. Miller.
The presentation was great, so I appreciate that. I can look at it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm always encouraged to see growth, so good job. I know we're not there, and I think we're still dealing with some learning loss. And I know we're a transient community, and so it's rare to have kids that, you know, walked in those doors as kindergartners and walk out the doors as high school graduates.
Yes.
So that, you know, I just think when you look at those numbers, you need to take those things into account. Mrs. Dean. Yep, me too. Mr. Bailey. Thank you. All right. You are off the hot sheet for now, Kim.
All right. And again, if you guys come up with questions throughout the week or the next month, feel free to send me an email and I'll see what I can do to get answers for you, and we can talk again next month if you have another question comes up. And
Yeah.
but thanks.
Thank you. All right, moving on. Superintendent's Communications, Mr. Witt.
The only item I have to update is I did receive notice from Mr. Lesmeister that the MHSAA has formally approved our cooperative swim program. which we'll be undertaking starting in the late summer with our partners from the school to the south of us. And so that's a positive thing for our students. And they're going to have an opportunity again to compete on a much fuller team than they have in the past. So that's it.
Exciting.
Thank you. Communications received by the board secretary, Mrs. Dean. Okay. Chief Financial Officer Communications, Mr. Beltink.
Nothing for today's meeting.
Okay. Executive Director of Human Resources and Labor Relations Communications, Mrs. Nachman.
All I have is to the teacher's contract, the tentative agreement that I brought forward last week. So I don't know if now's the time to ask questions or if that would come up under the action items when the vote is. I don't know how you want to do that.
Yeah. Probably when we get to the action item. That way we're,
Then I have nothing.
okay. Where am I? Oh, Executive Director of Curriculum and Technology Communications, Mrs. Crenshaw. You used your time. Oh,
I did, but would you like me to show you these videos that I have from
yes,
last
please.
week?
I will give you more time.
All right, thanks. They're not long videos, so I won't take much time because I know pizza's
I
coming
would
soon.
love to see that.
Yeah.
Every child deserves a chance to become a reader.
All cats are in the tally, curious, and learn quickly.
Hold on. Let's review inanely.
Hi, I'm Amira.
Meet Amira, an award-winning intelligent reading coach that provides just right reading practice for every student.
At Brubaker, we're all about doing what's best and right for kids, and Amira helps us to satisfy that, and we have ironclad evidence that Amira is what has worked for us.
It is fun. Wow.
Say watch 3 times as fast as you can.
Watch, watch, watch.
Developed at Carnegie Mellon with the science of reading at its core. Hailed by Time magazine as one of the best inventions of 2021. And receiving widespread recognition as the future of EdTech.
Our kids love her. Our parents love her. There's no way that teachers can humanly possible provide that one-to-one intervention and micro-intervention support that Amira does provide.
Great job. Here is a question for you about the story. You read this story 39 words faster than usual.
High five, the kind!
Every child can be a motivated, masterful reader with Amira.
Ready, set, start.
Like even just listening to it, it's not very loud.
Time for the rhyme.
That's where it's coming from.
Our word is hand. Which of these words rhymes with hand? Click to choose. You are right. Band rhymes with hand. Back to reading. You might have said looked instead of look. Be careful not to add an ed at the end. Now you say the word. Way to go. You read 37 words each minute and got 94% of them right. Appreciate you reading with me.
So that's kind of how a lesson would go with a student and how she makes those corrections and, the child added that ED at the end of the book. So that's why she had to say, we added that ED, so she tried to manage the sale. So those are the two videos. And that's all I have to add for tonight.
Thank you. All right, there is no consent agenda tonight. So we'll move on to action items, special consideration, non-consent agenda action items. 2023-2024 final budget. Can I get a motion that the Board of Education, at the recommendation of Ms. Mike Beltink, Chief Financial Officer, and Jason Witt, Superintendent, approve the 2023-2024 final budget as presented?
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Osowski,
Second.
seconded by Mrs. Martin. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, roll call, Mr. Bailey? Mrs. Dean? Mrs. Martin?
Yes.
Mr. McAfee is absent. Ms. Miller?
Yes.
Mr. Osowski?
Yes.
The chair votes yes. Motion carries. 2024-2025 initial budget. Can I get a motion that the Board of Education, at the recommendation of Mike Beltink, Chief Financial Officer, and Jason Witt, Superintendent, approve the 2024-2025 initial budget as presented?
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Osowski. Seconded by Ms. Miller. Is there any discussion? Hearing none. Mr. Bailey? Mrs. Dean? Mrs. Martin?
Yes.
Ms. Miller?
Yes.
Mr. Osowski?
Yes.
Chair votes yes. Motion carries. 2024 tax rate request L-4029. Can I get a motion that the Board of Education, at the recommendation of Mike Beltink, Chief Financial Officer, approve the 2024 tax rate request?
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Osowski. Seconded by Ms. Miller. Is there any discussion? Roll call, Mr. Bailey. Mrs. Dean? Mrs. Martin?
Yes.
Ms. Miller?
Yes.
Mr. Osowski?
Yes.
Chair votes yes. Motion carries. Okay. July 1st, item 4, July 1st, 2024 through June 30th, 2026 collective bargaining tentative agreement for the Redford Union Educational Association, RUEA. Can I get a motion that the Board of Education, at the recommendation of Judy Nachman, Executive Director of Human Resources, Labor Relations, and Jason Witt, Superintendent, adopt the tentative agreement between Redford Union Schools and the Redford Union Educational Association teachers, which provides for a new collective bargaining agreement for the 2024, 2025, and 2025-2026 school year?
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Osowski, seconded by Ms. Miller. Is there any discussion?
Yes.
Mrs. Martin?
I just had a few questions. Under the teacher evaluation, can someone explain number 5?
Sure, let me pull out my stuff here. No. Are you talking number 5 on the first page?
Yes, ma'am.
So part of the teacher's evaluation is developed using a student growth score, which we use currently right now. NWEA is the growth score that we use that is built into the teacher's evaluation. It's currently 40% of their evaluation. With the new legislation, the state has rolled that back to 20% of their evaluation. So for our, we use the state mandate is 80% of their evaluation is built off of their classroom observations and any other relevant data that takes place during the year, professionalism, attendance, participation in professional development, data collection, those sorts of things. And then 20% of their evaluation will be the student growth score. We use 2 items to make up that 20%. We use NWEA, and we also have each teacher develop a SMART goal that is academic-based, and the teachers need to collect evidence. They develop the goal with their administrator, and then they are to be collecting evidence throughout the year to measure their goal and submit that information at the end to their administrator. And so that's the 20% of their student growth score.
So before you said that, was it 40% with the state previous? And then
Yes.
that's what it was for us, 40%?
40% across the state. That was
Okay, so we just
that was
paid
the
it.
mandate.
Okay.
The legislation, the mandate is now 20%. We cannot make their evaluation more than 20% student growth.
But that is starting next school year. So
The
this year's
20
evaluations were based on 60% objective criteria and 40% student growth.
Thank you. And then I had another question on the second page, at the top, number C, bargaining agreement. What does, it's like, it says bargaining unit employees shall not evaluate other bargaining unit employees.
Yes.
Just wanted to know what that was.
So if I'm an RUEA member, I'm a teacher in the English department, and someone else, another RUEA member in the English department, cannot come over and evaluate me and provide an evaluation data to my administrator or any written data. Peers can't evaluate one another from the same bargaining unit.
So if it was let's say for instance, if it was a math person, because a math is just
Not if they're in the
period.
same bargaining
Got
unit,
it.
no.
Oh, okay.
But typically, they wouldn't do that. That's why we have coaches in place. Coaches can be in the classroom. And again, we ask that coaches don't provide evaluation data to the principals. That's not their job. Their job is to provide support to the teacher. So you might have an instructional coach in the room who's guiding the teacher and providing some written feedback, but not to the administrator.
And then I had a question about under, I guess this will fall under meetings, number 5 on the 3rd page.
Okay.
It was talking about, I guess, under evaluations that a teacher does not, if they received, I think it was, what was it?
They can receive 3 consecutive years of being not less than effective.
Yes.
Yes.
So then that means is you're gonna skip. Then that teacher don't get evaluated. They skipping what 2 years of evaluation.
3 consecutive years. Again, that is state law. That is legislation put in through the state. So if you have a teacher who received an effective or highly effective for 3 consecutive years, they do not need to be evaluated for 3 consecutive years. When they are evaluated after that 3rd year, if their evaluation is less than effective, then they go back on a yearly evaluation cycle until they reach 3 consecutive years of being effective. But by law, that is what they state. In our district, and this part is not law, but our teachers did agree to this, we still are expecting each of our teachers, whether they are being evaluated or not, to complete a SMART goal and to review the evidence and their data, their SMART goal with their administrator.
And thank you for that. When you say state legislation, are you talking about under the revised school code, or which legislation are you talking
Public
about?
Act 224, that's teacher evaluation. It's actually all educator evaluation.
Yep.
And I can forward you a copy of that.
Mr. Witt's evaluation is the same if he's highly effective for 3 years. So we
Oh yeah,
don't
I
have
saw
to-
that. Yeah, I was just wondering. I didn't know about the teachers. That's all. I was.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yep. Is there any further discussion? I just want to say I'm pleased to see us add that 15th step in the 2025-2026 school year. I know that, for teachers who are tenured, who've been here for a while, that's you know, that's important. And I think that was all I had.
And just so you know, this contract pretty much unanimously was voted. There were only 3 votes of no among the RUEA members, so this was well received by our teacher group.
Is there any further questions? All right, hearing none, roll call. Mr. Bailey? Mrs. Dean? Mrs. Martin?
Yes.
Ms. Miller?
Yes.
Mr. Osowski?
Yes.
Chair votes yes. Motion carries 6-0. Aren't we glad to have that piece of work done? Bargaining is always fun.
Yes, to do more.
Number 5, Houghton Mifflin Harcourt Intro Reading K-6 Curriculum. Can I get a motion that the Board of Education, at the recommendation of Kim Crenshaw, Executive Director of Curriculum and Technology, Jason Witt, Superintendent, and Chris Norton, Coordinator of Teaching and Learning, approve the purchase of the Houghton Mifflin Harcourt English Language Arts Curriculum into Reading, a 5-year license for grades K through 6 at a cost not to exceed $255,000. A total of $221,779 in Section 35J Professional Development Curriculum and Supports Grant funding will be used to pay for this purchase for grades K through 5. The remaining amount will be paid out of other grant funding, if applicable, and general fund dollars.
So moved.
Support.
Moved by Mr. Osowski, seconded by Mrs. Martin. Is there any discussion? So basically, the grant is paying for the majority of this. Love it. Love that.
And also the quote that you were sent, I think Friday, right, Jackie?
Yes.
Is a couple $100 more than the one that you have today, because we took one of the things off that we didn't feel like we needed. It took her some time to get the readjusted grant quote. So just so when you see that, and that's all. Just want to make sure you knew that.
Is there any further questions? All right, hearing none, roll call. Mr. Bailey? Mrs. Dean? Mrs. Martin?
Yes.
Ms. Miller?
Yes.
Mr. Osowski?
Yes.
Chair votes yes. Motion carries. Item number 6. Actually, did we want to take a break before we go into closed session?
No, just
Okay. We want to go into closed session and eat and close.
Take the vote and then we can.
Okay, gotcha. Item 6, can I get a motion that the Board of Education, at the request of Jason Witt, Superintendent, go into closed session for the superintendent's evaluation as permitted under Section 8(1)A of the Michigan Open Meetings Act, MCL 15.268.
so moved.
Support.
Moved by, I don't know who was, I'm going to give Ms. Miller the motion, seconded by Mrs. Martin. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, this recalls a roll call. Mr. Bailey? Mrs. Dean? Mrs. Martin?
Yes.
Ms. Miller?
Yes.
Mr. Osowski?
Yes.
The chair votes yes. 6-0. So we are in closed session as of 6:25 p.m. We will return
We will return.
after we're done evaluating.